The fluorescent light above me buzzes. One long, unbroken note. I am standing in a line. That much I know. The carpet under my feet is the color of something that was once blue. My carry-on handle is warm from my grip. I have been holding it for a long time. Gate B14, Richmond International, December 26th. The line moves forward and I move with it. One step, another. The boarding pass is in my left hand, the passport in my right, the way I always do it. 33 years of being the kind of person who has a system for everything. The kind of person who gets to the gate 20 minutes early and double-checks the seat assignment she already memorized. A hand touches my elbow. Not grabbing, not rough. Just a hand, placed there, deliberate and quiet. I turn. The man beside me is in a TSA uniform. Young. He is not looking at me the way people look at you when you have done something wrong. He is looking at me the way people look at you when something has been done to you and they have been asked to be the one who tells you. He says quietly, "Ma'am, don't get on that plane. Come with me." The boarding pass is still in my hand. I look at it. Then I look at him. I go with him. The corridor is narrow and smells like cleaning solution and recycled air. A door, unmarked. A room on the other side that has no windows and one metal table and 2 chairs, and a woman already sitting in one of them waiting, wearing a dark blazer and an expression that I recognize from my own work, the expression of someone who already knows everything they are about to show you. She says, "My name is Agent Sandra Briggs. Please sit down." I sit. On the table in front of her, 2 photographs, side by side, like a comparison. I do this kind of work. I look at images for a living. I analyze what the eye catches and what it misses. I have spent 11 years as a forensic video analyst finding the thing in the frame that the frame was not meant to show, so I know how to read what I am seeing. The photograph on the left is my face. The photograph on the right is a woman I have never seen in my life. Both photographs are attached to documents. Both documents have the same name at the top. My name, Emma Catherine Davis, date of birth, social security number, current address in Richmond, Virginia. Same on each sheet, but different faces. Agent Briggs lets me look. She does not rush it. Then she slides a 3rd document across the table. Her hand moves slowly. She watches mine. An insurance policy. I read the number at the top, and then I read it again. 7 figures. A death benefit. The kind of policy that gets taken out on someone before something happens to them. Name of insured, Emma Catherine Davis. Beneficiary, Adela Davis. Effective date, September 14th. 3 months ago. I am still holding the boarding pass. I look down at it without meaning to. The destination field. The return date I had assumed was there. The round trip Adela had pressed into my hands on Christmas Eve with both of hers. Squeezing, saying, "You work too hard, Em. You need this. You never take time for yourself." I had glanced at the first few lines and tucked it into my jacket pocket and felt, for the first time in a long time, taken care of. One way. Richmond to Panama City. No return. The table is very cold under my fingertips. The fluorescent light above me is still making that sound. 90 minutes ago I was in a car. Adela was driving. The heater was running and she was asking about my last case, a deep fake detection job for an insurance company in Ohio. And she laughed when I explained how metadata gets embedded in files and said, "You're basically a professional liar catcher." And I said something like that. And she said the world needs more of those. Her hands easy on the wheel, the radio low. 30 minutes from Mom and Dad's house to the departure drop-off, and she talked the whole way, the way she always does, filling the air so completely that there is never space to notice what she is not saying. She held on to my boarding pass until we reached the curb. I thought nothing of it. She's organized. She always has been. Adela handles things. That is the family shorthand for it. Adela handles things. Let her handle it. She's good at this. She planned the whole trip. Isn't that generous? Isn't that like her? She handed it to me through the car window. Send me a selfie from the beach. Then the car was moving, and I was standing on the sidewalk watching it go, and there was something, a small wrongness I couldn't name, the way you feel when you've left a room and can't remember if you turned off a light. I stood there with my carry-on and my passport and the boarding pass I had not yet fully read. I went inside. I did not look at the return date. My mother tied a luggage tag onto my carry-on yesterday morning, new one, laminated, very neat. She said it's the resort address, honey, in case your bag gets lost. Her hands were sure and quick, the knot tight. The way she tied my shoes when I was small, the same motion, the same efficiency, like she had been practicing. I did not read the address. My father said, "You should go. Enjoy it." He was looking at the window, not at me. I did not think about why. Christmas Eve, the house smelling like cinnamon rolls and firewood, the whole family at the table, everyone talking over each other the way they do. I noticed Adela was wearing a gold watch I didn't recognize, something old, the face slightly scratched, and I almost asked about it, and then the conversation moved and I let it go. I noticed that the photo of Aunt Patricia was gone from the mantel, replaced by a newer frame, and I felt a small pull of something I didn't name, and then Veronica changed the subject, and the moment passed. I noticed Roger barely spoke all evening and sat very still in his chair with his bourbon, and I told myself it was the bankruptcy still, the way it had taken the specific stiffness out of him. And I left it there. I notice things for a living. I build timelines from fragments. I proved in a court case 2 years ago that a man was somewhere he said he wasn't because of the angle of light in a single frame of surveillance footage. I see what the frame was not meant to show. I did not turn any of that toward my own family. Not once. Agent Briggs has not looked away from me since I sat down. I put the boarding pass on the table, face up. One way. My carry-on is still on my shoulder. I have not taken it off. The luggage tag hangs from the handle, the one my mother tied on with the quick certain knot, the address I did not read written inside a laminated sleeve. My coat is still buttoned. The fluorescent light is still humming. Outside this room, beyond the corridor and the unmarked door and the blue-gray carpet of gate B14, a plane is boarding without me. I look at the photograph on the right. The woman I don't know, my name on her document. I look at the photograph on the left. Then I look at the insurance policy. Then I look at Briggs. She says nothing. She is waiting for me to finish arriving. Briggs sets a folder on the table. She opens it without ceremony, the way someone opens a file they have looked at many times and stopped being surprised by. The duplicate identity, she says, was created 8 months ago. Same name, same date of birth, different biometrics. Someone used my information to apply for a second passport with a different photograph. The application went through a new federal cross-referencing system that flagged it, and that flag triggered an investigation that her team has been running for the past 4 months. My ticket purchased through Meridian Journeys connected everything 72 hours ago. She says, the person who bought this ticket did not want you to come back. The words sit in the air between us. I do not ask her to repeat them. She slides the passport application across the table. The photograph in the upper right corner is the same woman from the side-by-side comparison, the same stranger wearing my name, my birth date, my whole paper self. The application is filled out in careful block letters, nothing rushed, the handwriting of someone who planned this over time and did not hurry. I asked to see the insurance documents again. Briggs pulls them from the folder. I lay them flat in front of me and look at the signature line. It looks like mine. The loop of the E, the way the D trails at the end. I have signed my name thousands of times, on chain of custody forms and court affidavits and digital authentication logs, and I know the shape of it the way I know my own reflection. I angle the page slightly toward the light. The pressure is wrong. The pen dragged left where mine pulls right. The angle is consistent across every letter, a 10-degree leftward lean that does not belong to me. I am right-handed. This signature was written by someone who is not. I say, this isn't my signature. Briggs says, we know. I set the document down. I am aware of my hands on the table. Aware of the specific temperature of this room, which is slightly too cold, the kind of cold that has been maintained for a long time by a system that does not account for whether anyone is comfortable. I keep my hands flat. I ask who the beneficiary is. She says, your sister. Adela Davis. I have said Adela's name in my head 10,000 times. I have said it out loud in every register, annoyed and affectionate and bored and proud, the way you say the name of someone who has always been part of the background noise of your life. I say it to myself now, silently, and it lands differently than it ever has. Like a word you have said so many times, it stops sounding like a word. I do not cry. I do not deny it. I do something that feels worse than both of those things. I start calculating. Every gift, every call she made to check on me that I now understand as inventory. The birthday dinner 3 years ago when she asked very specific questions about my finances and I thought she was just interested, just being the sister who cares about those things. The time she offered to help me set up a better investment account and I declined, and she said okay, of course, no pressure. The trip she planned for our mother's 65th birthday, every detail handled by Adela, every document and reservation and car service, and how easy it felt to let her. How good it felt to not be the one managing everything for once. Every time Adela handled something I had not asked her to handle and I said thank you. Every time something sat slightly wrong and I filed it under the category of family, which in my experience has always meant things that feel slightly wrong but continue anyway. I say, you said 72 hours ago. Yes. The ticket was purchased before that. The ticket was purchased 6 weeks ago. She pulls another page from the folder. The insurance policy was established 3 months ago. The bank account opened in your name was created 5 months ago. The passport application was submitted 8 months ago. 8 months. I was working a deepfake case for a pharmaceutical company in August. I remember it specifically because the weather was bad and I was working late every night and Adela called twice that week and I didn't pick up either time. I texted her back, sorry, swamped. She sent back a thumbs up and said no rush, just thinking of you. I look at the routing document Briggs places in front of me next. She said Costa Rica, I say. The destination listed on your boarding pass is the first leg, Briggs says. She traces the line with her finger. Richmond to Panama City. Panama City to a regional airport I have never heard of, in a coastal municipality with no U.S. consular presence. The layover in Panama City is listed as 4 hours, but the connecting flight is registered separately, booked through a different carrier under the same passenger name. You would have been rerouted at the gate, she says. The second leg would have appeared on a separate boarding pass issued at the connection point. I look at the municipality. I look at the name of the regional airport. Briggs says it has appeared in 4 other missing persons cases in the past 5 years. People arrive. Their digital lives continue. Bank accounts active. Phones pinging cell towers. Social media posts appearing with captions about the weather. But no one can confirm the person behind any of it. The original individual is simply gone, and a curated version of their existence keeps running for however long it needs to. I set the routing document down next to the insurance policy next to the passport application. 3 pieces of paper. 8 months of planning. My whole life arranged into an exit that was never meant to be reversible. The carry-on is still on my shoulder. I reach up and take it off, finally, and set it on the floor beside my chair. The luggage tag my mother tied on swings once and goes still. Briggs says, I want to offer you a choice. She explains it plainly. I can walk out of this room, return to my life, and let the FBI continue the investigation without me. Or I can cooperate, which will mean staying in contact, providing information, possibly being asked to do things that will be difficult. The investigation is active either way. My participation would accelerate it. I say, what do you need from me right now? I'd like you to call your sister. I look at her. Act as if nothing has happened. Ask her something small, something she would expect you to know. I need to hear how she responds. I pick up my phone. Adela's name is near the top of my recent calls. I press it. She answers on the second ring, her voice bright, almost eager, the way it gets when she is pleased with herself about something. She says, are you on the plane? I say I am about to board. I say the flight looks good. I say I think I might actually sleep for once. She laughs. She says she is jealous. She says she wants pictures, all of them, the beach and the food, and especially if I find one of those little outdoor bars that serves drinks in coconut shells. I say, add the luggage tag Mom put on my bag. What's the resort address? I want to look it up before I land. 2 seconds of silence. Not long. Most people would not notice it. Then she laughs again, shorter this time. She says, oh, Mom probably got it wrong. You know how she is. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy yourself. The resort will have your reservation. I say, okay. I say I'll send pictures. I hang up. Briggs has been listening through a small device on the table. She nods once. I sit with the phone in my hand and I do not put it down yet. My thumb rests against the screen and I am back in my parents' kitchen. Yesterday morning, the light gray and flat through the window, the way December light always is in Virginia. My mother at the counter making coffee, moving with the specific efficiency she has always had in that kitchen, everything in its place, nothing wasted. Adela's phone on the counter beside the sugar bowl. A text notification appearing on the screen, visible for less than a second before Adela swept it up and turned it over. A name I didn't recognize. 2 words. Nothing that meant anything to me in that moment because I was thinking about my suitcase and whether I'd packed enough layers. I register it now. I put my phone on the table. I look at Briggs. The 2-second pause in Adela's voice is still sitting in my ear. The way she filled it with laughter that was 1 degree too practiced. The warmth turned up by a fraction. The way you turn up a radio to cover a sound in another room. I have analyzed vocal recordings for 11 years. I know what a voice sounds like when it is performing instead of speaking. That was the first crack. And she doesn't know I heard it. Briggs has a second folder, thicker than the first. She opens it and I see my father's signature before she says a word because I know what Roger Davis's handwriting looks like, the particular forward lean of it. The way the capital R always looks slightly like it is trying to leave. The Davis Family Trust, she says, established 14 months ago. Roger Davis, trustee and co-signatory on the insurance application. Power of attorney granted to Adela Davis over all trust assets. Signed voluntarily, notarized in Henrico County on a Tuesday morning in October. I ask if my father knows what the documents do. Briggs says they believe he understands they involve financial restructuring. They do not believe he knows the full scope. I think about that. Financial restructuring. The phrase my father would have accepted without pressing because he spent 7 years watching a hardware store he built from nothing dismantle itself 1 overdue invoice at a time. And by the end, he had lost the vocabulary for questioning money. He had lost the vocabulary for most things. What remained was the recliner and the bourbon and the particular quality of silence he used when he did not want to be somewhere but could not figure out how to leave. I just handle paperwork. I can hear his voice so clearly that for a moment I think I've said it out loud. His voice when he is not quite meeting your eyes. His voice when he has decided the only available option is to be very small and very still and hope the thing passes. He signed. He just handled the paperwork. Briggs moves to the next page. She asks about my mother. I reconstruct the packing out loud the way I would reconstruct a scene for a case. Yesterday morning, 8:45 approximately. Veronica Davis, age 60, retired school librarian, came into my childhood bedroom with a folded list of items she felt I had forgotten to pack, and proceeded to correct the situation with the focused energy she has always brought to tasks that allow her to be helpful without being asked anything difficult. She chose the suitcase. That one, not that one, the carry-on is better, you don't want to check a bag. She specified which pocket for the passport. She provided the luggage tag new laminated her handwriting inside the sleeve. An address she received from Adela and did not question because Veronica Davis has spent 60 years in the practice of not questioning things that would require her to act. I say she knew the address. She had to have received it from someone, Briggs says. She wouldn't have known it otherwise. She didn't ask what it was. No. I close my eyes for just a moment. Not long. The smell of cinnamon rolls reaches me from somewhere deep in the body, the way sense memory does, arriving without permission. The laminated tag, the particular way my mother's hands moved, quick and certain, the knot made tight, the way you make a knot when you want something to stay, in case your bag gets lost, honey. I open my eyes. The fluorescent light is still there. The folder is still open. My father's signature is right there on the page, and my mother put a tag on my bag with both hands and said honey, and Adela was laughing in the car this morning, her hands easy on the wheel, filling the air so completely there was no room for anything else. I have spent 11 years in a profession that requires me to look at what is true, even when someone has worked very hard to make it look like something else. I am good at it. I have never failed to find the thing in the frame that the frame was not meant to show. I excused myself to the restroom. That is the clearest memory from this afternoon, around the 3-hour mark, when Briggs stepped out to take a call, and I walked down the hall and stood at the sink under a light, identical to the one in the interview room, fluorescent, no warmth. The kind of light that shows you exactly what you look like. I ran the water cold. I put my hands under it. I ran through every Thanksgiving, every birthday, every Sunday phone call with my mother where she asked about my work and said things like, "You've always been so capable," and "Isn't that wonderful?" And I let those sentences land like they were gifts. I saw things. I always saw them. Adila's income, generous and unexplained, and somehow always available when the family needed something covered. Roger's nervous compliance, the way he would agree to things without reading them, the way he'd stopped reading things entirely after the bankruptcy, as if paperwork had become a language he'd chosen not to speak anymore. Veronica's relentless cheer, the way she moved toward food and activity whenever a room approached something true, her hands always busy, always refilling, always adjusting. I saw it, every piece of it. I filed it under family, and I let it sit there, and I did not press. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said it out loud to no one. I saw it. I chose not to see it. There was no revelation in saying it, no relief. It just sat there in the cold light, factual, the way things are when you finally stop deciding they might be something else. The water ran over my hands. I turned it off. I dried them on a paper towel and walked back down the hall to the room where Briggs was waiting, and I sat back down. She looked at me and did not ask. That is the thing about people who work in truth for a living. They recognize the moment after. They don't make you explain it. Briggs asks the question the same way she asks everything. No softening, no let-in. Has anyone in your family died unexpectedly in the past several years? I say yes. I say my Aunt Patricia. 3 years ago, single-car accident on a rural road in West Virginia, heading to a wellness retreat that Adila had arranged for her birthday. Local police ruled it single vehicle, no witnesses. Patricia was 52. She had been recently widowed and was, according to everyone who said anything at the funeral, finally starting to find her footing again. The room goes very still, not quiet. The fluorescent light is still there. The hum that has been with me for hours now. The ventilation somewhere behind the ceiling. But Briggs stops moving. Her pen stops. She looks at me with an attention that is different from the careful professional attention she has given everything else. And I understand before she speaks that this question was not routine. She asks which travel agency booked Patricia's trip. I don't know. I never knew. Patricia handled her own travel, and I was 30 and living in a different city, and the trip was a gift from Adila, so Adila would have handled it. Briggs picks up her phone. She makes a call I can only hear one side of. She says a name and a date and Patricia's full name, and asks for booking records on a wellness retreat departure, West Virginia origin, 3 years ago, October. She listens. She writes something on the notepad in front of her. She turns the notepad so I can read it. Meridian Journeys. I look at the name. I look at it the way you look at something when your brain refuses to process it at full speed, slowing itself down against the impact. Meridian Journeys. The name on my ticket. The name I glanced at on Christmas Eve when Adila handed me the envelope. The name I did not recognize and did not look up and set aside in the category of things Adila handled. The same agency. Briggs sends for Patricia's case file. It takes 20 minutes. I sit in the chair and I do not reach for my phone, and I do not fill the silence with anything. I have learned in 11 years of this work that silence is not something that needs to be fixed. It is just time. Time during which the thing you already know works its way to the surface. The file arrives. Briggs opens it and sets it in front of me. Patricia's insurance was increased 6 months before her death. The beneficiary on the updated policy was listed as Adila Davis. Patricia's assets, including her home in Charleston, and a savings account totaling a number that would have mattered deeply to a retired woman living alone, were transferred within 8 weeks of her death to a family trust managed by Roger Davis. The car accident was investigated by a rural county sheriff's department with a 3-person staff. The report is 2 pages. Single vehicle. No skid marks. Weather was clear. Case closed. I read it twice. Then I set it down and I pick up my own file and I hold both of them, one in each hand, and I look back and forth. Same insurance structure, same travel agency, same trust, same family members in the same positions. Roger signing Adela, directing Patricia, driving to a place Adela chose on a route Adela arranged through a company that is according to everything Briggs has shown me. A front connected to 4 other missing persons cases across the southeastern United States. With Patricia, it worked. I set both files on the table. I say it out loud because I need to hear it take up space in the actual air of the room, not just in my head. I was not the first victim. I was the upgraded version. Briggs confirms it without flinching. The Patricia operation had inefficiencies. No replacement identity, no controlled destination, no mechanism for continuing Emma's digital presence after the disappearance. What happened to Patricia was the rougher version. What nearly happened to me was refined. A second passport, a replacement already in place, a routed destination where people arrive and do not return. 8 months of preparation against Patricia's approximate 3. She had time to learn. She had a prototype to improve on. I say, the watch. Briggs looks at me. Adela was wearing a gold watch on Christmas Eve. Vintage. Something scratched on the face at the 2 position. She said she found it at an estate sale. I stop. That was Patricia's watch. I almost asked about it and then the conversation moved. I know that watch. I saw it on Patricia's wrist at every family gathering for 15 years. Briggs writes it down. She says they will need to verify it through the evidence inventory, but she is writing it down. I think about Adela at the Christmas table, radiant. The word that always attached itself to her in family settings, the center of the room, handing out gifts with both hands, laughing at something Roger said even though Roger barely said anything all evening. The gold watch catching the candlelight. Patricia's watch on Adela's wrist at the dinner table where someone said, Patricia would have loved this, and Veronica changed the subject and we all let her. That is when I asked to be excused for the night. The FBI has arranged a hotel room, not close to the airport, not close to my apartment, because Adela has a key to my apartment and has had one for 4 years, and I handed it to her myself when I was going through a stretch of work travel and asked if she could water the plants. She watered the plants. She kept the key. I never asked for it back. I sit on the hotel bed for a while. The bedspread is the neutral beige of every hotel bedspread everywhere, and the window looks out on a parking lot under yellow lights, and the heating unit under the window cycles on and off with a sound like something trying to clear its throat. I pick up my phone. I scroll to a photo from last Christmas. Me and Adela and my parents at the dining room table. Everyone smiling, the good dishes out, candles lit. Patricia's chair is just at the left edge of the frame. Empty. We had stopped setting a place for her. By then it had been 2 years, but someone, and I cannot remember who, had pushed that chair in close to the table rather than leaving it pushed back the way empty chairs usually sit, and the effect is that it looks occupied rather than absent, like someone might be there if you just looked away and looked back. I set the phone face down on the bedside table. Nothing felt wrong because everything was designed not to. I know this. I have built a career out of knowing this. Fabrications that hold are not held together by obvious lies. They are held together by the spaces around the lies, the parts that are completely real, the cinnamon rolls and the holiday table and the sister who always answers on the second ring. You do not fake everything. You only fake the specific thing that needs to be hidden, and you surround it with so much genuine texture that the eye slides right past. I taught a seminar on this 3 years ago. Detection of composite media, the way a manipulated image carries its tells, not in the altered section, but in the interaction between the altered section and everything real around it. The edge, the place where the false meets the true, is always, always where it shows. I had the tools. I had the framework. I had 11 years of knowing exactly where to look. I just never turned them on my own family. The heating unit cycles off. The parking lot is quiet below. I lie back on the neutral bedspread in my clothes and I stare at the ceiling and I stay there until sometime before 4 in the morning when I stop trying to sleep and accept that what I am doing is simply waiting. By morning, the grief has completed some internal process I was not present for. It has become something else. Not gone. It hasn't gone anywhere. But it has shifted. the way a material shifts under sustained pressure, and what is left feels less like suffering and more like data. I shower. I put on the same clothes from yesterday because they are what I have. I stand at the window for a while. The parking lot in morning light looks exactly like the parking lot in yellow artificial light, except colder and more honest. Ordinary cars in ordinary rows. A man loading luggage into a rental sedan in the row closest to the building, moving with the deliberate efficiency of someone on a schedule. A woman in a coat walking from the side entrance to her car, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, the small practiced management of a person with somewhere to be. None of it knows what I know. The whole ordinary world outside this window is operating on the assumption that things are generally what they appear to be. I used to live there. 24 hours ago, I was in that world. I turn away from the window. My work bag is on the chair beside the desk, where I dropped it on Christmas Eve at my parents' house. I had brought it because I always bring it. The habit of someone who has never fully left work mode, a reflex that my last supervisor called pathological and I called professional, and we never resolved. Inside, it is my field kit. The external drives, and the metadata analysis software on its own isolated laptop, and the calibrated color reference cards I use for footage comparison, and the chain of custody forms I print in batches because I always need them, the same tools I use to find what is hidden in an image, the same process I apply to prove what is real and what has been manufactured. I pick up the bag, I set it on the desk, I sit down. I do not call anyone. I do not spend time with what I am feeling because I have already spent the night with it, and that is enough. I open the isolated laptop, and I open a blank document, and I start building a timeline. December 26th. Date of intended departure. Ticket purchased 6 weeks prior, meaning approximately November 14th. I write the date. Policy established September 14th. I write that. Bank account opened in my name, approximately 5 months ago, meaning July. Passport application submitted 8 months ago, meaning April. April. I was finishing a 3-month case in April, working for a logistics company that suspected internal document fraud. I remember April because the cherry trees outside my office building were ridiculous that year. Embarrassingly pink, and I ate lunch outside twice, and both times felt briefly like a person who did things like eat lunch outside, and then went back inside. In April, someone was submitting a passport application with my name and someone else's face. The planning for my disappearance was already 8 weeks old by the time I sat under those trees. I keep writing. Patricia's policy increase, 6 months before her death, meaning approximately April of that year. That October, the drive to the retreat. The same travel agency. The accident on a rural road. No skid marks, clear weather, case closed in 2 pages. I write it all down in the order it happened. Not the order I learned it, the order it actually happened. Which is different, which is the only order that matters when you are trying to understand the shape of something. When I have the full timeline in front of me, I look at it for a long time without changing anything. Then I call Briggs. I tell her I want digital copies of every document she has shown me. The insurance policy, the trust paperwork, the passport application, the bank account records, Patricia's case file. I tell her I want to run metadata analysis on everything that was generated digitally. She asks what I am looking for. I tell her I will know it when I find it, which is not entirely true, but is true enough because I am looking for the edge, the place where the fabrication meets the real, and I have never, in 11 years, failed to find it once I started looking. She says she will have the files transferred to me within 2 hours. I say, while you're doing that, I need to tell you something about Adila's operational pattern that I think you already know, but I want to say it explicitly. Briggs says, go ahead. Every detail of this trip was controlled by Adila. She purchased the ticket, she arranged the ride, and drove it herself. She held my boarding pass until the last possible moment at the curb, which meant I never had uninterrupted time alone with it to examine it carefully. She left before I reached the terminal door, which meant there was no reason to linger and no moment where I might have turned back with a question. She kept the conversation full and warm and specific the entire drive, asking about my work, asking in detail, which is the most effective way to occupy the analytic mind. You give it something real to do, and it stops looking for problems. I say, she didn't hold on to that boarding pass because she's organized. She held on to it because she needed to control when I received it. Because once I had it in my hands alone, the risk of me actually reading it went up. Briggs says, we identified that pattern in the Patricia case as well. Patricia received her travel documents directly at the departure point. Same signature, same control of logistics, same elimination of the moment where the target might look too closely. I look at the timeline on my screen. I look at the date in April when someone was already planning this while I was eating lunch under the cherry trees. I say, she made a mistake. Briggs waits. She used a personal computer. They all do, eventually, because operational security is exhausting to maintain over 8 months, and at some point it becomes easier to use the machine you're sitting in front of. I close the blank document and open the analysis software. When you send me those files, I'm going to find the device identifier embedded in the document metadata. And when I do, we're going to be able to prove not just what was created, but where and by whom. She didn't think anyone would ever look. She forgot what I do for a living. The files arrive at 9:47 in the morning. Briggs sends them through an encrypted transfer protocol, and I receive them on the isolated laptop, the one that has never touched a home network or a cloud service. The one I carry specifically because my work sometimes involves materials that cannot risk exposure. I set up the analysis environment the same way I do for every case. Reference folder, working folder, output folder, chain of custody log opened, time-stamped, my name at the top, Emma Davis. Forensic video and document analyst. Client, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Unit. Case number assigned by Briggs's office. Date, December 27th. I run the metadata extraction on the insurance policy first. The software takes 4 minutes. I have done this enough times that I do not watch the progress bar. I make coffee from the hotel room's small machine, the kind that produces something approximately in the category of coffee, and I drink it standing at the window looking at the parking lot, which has not changed in any meaningful way since this morning. The output loads. The document was created on a personal device, not a broker's system, not a commercial platform with institutional formatting standards. A personal laptop, running consumer software, the kind anyone can purchase and install. The device identifier is embedded in the file properties, the way a fingerprint is embedded in clay, not visible to the eye, not removable without destroying the document itself. I write down the identifier string. The document was edited 14 times over a period of 3 months. I can see each save point, each revision, the document growing and changing over a September to December timeline that maps exactly onto the policy's effective date and the weeks surrounding it. Someone sat with this document on 14 separate occasions and refined it the way you refine something you are trying to make look official, trying to make look like it was generated by a system rather than built by a person. The digital signature at the bottom of the policy was created using a template. I recognize the template family because I have seen it before, in a case 2 years ago involving forged pharmaceutical compliance documents, the same structural approach to mimicking an institutional signature block. The template matches the one embedded in Patricia's policy, which Briggs included in the file transfer at my request. Same template, same device identifier. The documents were authored under a single user profile. The profile name embedded in the metadata is A. Davis. She did not use a separate account. She sat at her own computer, under her own name, and built the documents that were meant to end my life. Either she was certain no one would ever look, or she had been doing this long enough that she stopped thinking about the possibility. Both explanations feel, in this moment, equally cold. I flag the authorship data in the device identifier and the template match and the 14 revision points, and I write the summary the way I write every forensic summary, in plain language, no jargon, the kind of sentences that will hold up when read aloud in a courtroom by someone who has never opened a metadata analysis tool in their life. She didn't think anyone would ever look. I send the summary to Briggs at 11:23, and I am on my second cup of hotel coffee when she calls back. She says, Claudia Merritt has been located. Briggs tells me what she told me before, in briefer form. Claudia Merritt, 35, divorced 14 months ago, last known address in Norfolk, Virginia. College friend of Adela's. The FBI approached her apartment that morning. She was packing a suitcase, not for a trip, for a relocation. She had a folder on her kitchen table containing documents, a social security card with my number and her photograph, a Virginia driver's license with my name and her face, a lease application for an apartment in a city I have never lived in, signed Emma Davis, with a reference letter from an employer I have never worked for, formatted with the same template family I found in the insurance documents. She was going to become me. She was 48 hours from stepping into the life I was supposed to have vacated. Briggs says when her agents explained the full situation, Claudia Merritt sat down on the floor of her own kitchen. Not a chair, the floor. She stayed there for several minutes before she would speak. She told them Adela had explained it as a voluntary relocation, that I was leaving the country for personal reasons and needed someone to manage my financial identity during a transitional period, that it was a family arrangement, that the compensation, 3 wire transfers over 12 months totaling a number that would feel like rescue to someone in the financial position Claudia was in after her divorce, was for discretion and assistance with paperwork. She said she thought it was unusual. She said she did not ask enough questions. She said Adela had a way of presenting things that made additional questions feel unnecessary, like the shape of the explanation was already so complete that pressing on it would only reveal your own confusion. I know that quality in Adela. The completeness of her explanations, the way a conversation with her always feels resolved by the time it ends. Claudia provided everything, the full communication archive between her and Adela, going back 13 months. The document preparation timeline with dates and file names, and a voice recording made on her phone during a meeting at Adela's apartment in November, which Claudia says she made because something felt wrong and she did not know what else to do with that feeling. In the recording, Adela's voice is clear and even and practical. Once Emma's gone, she says, "You become her. That's the deal." Briggs plays me the recording over the phone, 11 seconds. I listen to it once. I do not ask her to play it again. Briggs sends me one more item from the field team's report before the day is out, the address on the luggage tag my mother tied onto my carry-on. She traced it the same afternoon Claudia flipped. It is not a resort. It is a P.O. box, registered to a holding company called Meridian Holdings, LLC, a subsidiary of the same network that operated the travel agency. The tag was designed to create a paper record showing I had arrived at the destination. If I had boarded and disappeared, the tag would have been recovered with my luggage and used to confirm my presence at the location. Physical evidence, laminated, tied in a tight knot by my mother's hands. My mother tied it on with both hands and said, "In case your bag gets lost, honey." She made the knot tight, the same way she tied my shoes when I was small. I sit with that for a long time. 3 days pass, I stay in the hotel. I work. Briggs sends updates in the form of surveillance reports, a written summary at the end of each day of what Adela's movements have shown. I read them the way I read all case materials, looking for the pattern beneath the sequence of events. Day 1 after the flight. Adela visits the insurance broker's office in the late morning. She is inside for 34 minutes. She leaves carrying the same folder she arrived with. Day 2. She calls Roger. The call lasts 11 minutes. The FBI has authorization for the content. Roger says very little. Adela does most of the talking. She uses the phrase finalizing some paperwork twice. Roger says, "Okay, I understand. Okay." Day 3. She posts on social media. I see the post because Briggs includes a screenshot in the report. A photograph taken at the airport departure drop-off, the one she took through the car window just before she handed me the boarding pass and pulled away. In the photograph, I am on the sidewalk, my carry-on beside me, looking back toward the car. I am smiling. I did not know she was taking the picture. The caption reads, "My baby sister off to paradise." So proud of her. I look at that photograph for a long time. I am smiling in it. Not performing a smile, not a photograph smile, a real one. The kind that happens when you are genuinely glad about something. I was glad, standing on that sidewalk. I was touched that she had planned the trip and handled every detail and driven me herself and filled the car with warmth the whole way. I was going to send her pictures from the beach. She has not sent me a single message since the airport. Not a text asking if I landed safely, not a "how was the flight," not a "did you find the resort?" Nothing. Because she does not expect me to be reachable. Because in her timeline I am somewhere without reliable signal, moving toward a place from which people do not return, and the absence of contact is exactly what she planned for. She posted that photograph and wrote that caption, and in the same 24 hours visited the broker and called my father about paperwork, and she has not wondered once where I am. I close the report. I stand at the window. The parking lot. The ordinary cars. I call Briggs and I say, I think we should move before she files the claim. Briggs says she disagrees. She says the claim is the irrefutable act. Conspiracy charges are difficult. Fraud charges that can be tied to a completed filing are not. She says, wait. I say, how long? She says she does not think it will be more than 2 weeks. Adila's timeline requires her to file before the policy's provisional period closes. She will move when she has to. I say, all right. I go back to the window. 19 days. I wait. January 14th. Briggs texts me at 10:12 in the morning. 4 words. She's going in now. I am already dressed. I have been dressed since 7. I have been sitting in the chair by the desk with my coat across my lap and my phone on the desk, and I have been doing the thing I do when I am waiting for a process to complete, which is to hold very still and let time move without trying to manage it. I put my coat on, I take the elevator down, an FBI vehicle is waiting at the side entrance. The broker's office is in a commercial district in the west end of Richmond, one of those low-profile financial services suites in a building that also contains a dental practice and an accounting firm. Glass doors, a small lobby, a receptionist behind a desk who looks up when we come in. Briggs goes through first, 2 agents behind her. I come last. The waiting area has 4 chairs and a plant that is doing its best. Through the interior window, I can see the broker's office. The door is open. Adila is sitting in the chair across from the broker's desk, her back to me, and she is talking. I can see her shoulders, the set of them, the composed and slightly forward lean she always has when she is being persuasive. She is wearing the good coat, the charcoal one, the one she saves for occasions. Her hair is done. She came prepared. She is explaining something to the broker, gesturing once with her right hand, a small controlled gesture. The broker is looking at the paperwork in front of him. I say, I didn't go. Not loud, normal voice. The same voice I use at the beginning of every client meeting when I introduce myself and explain what I am there to do. Adila goes still, not the stillness of someone who is startled, the stillness of someone whose processing has stopped because the input does not match any model they prepared for. She turns. Her face does not change. That is the thing I will carry out of this room and look at for years afterward. The thing I will hold the way you hold a piece of evidence that explains something you have been trying to understand for a long time. The color does not leave her face. Her expression does not shift or fracture. For 3 full seconds she looks at me with the same calm, assessing gaze I have seen my whole life, the gaze I always read as attentiveness, as the focus of a person who is genuinely interested in you. I understand it now. I understand what it actually is. It is the gaze of a person who is calculating. Then she smiles. The warmth arrives on her face the way it always does, practiced and real, looking at once, and she stands and opens her arms and says, oh my God, you're back. What happened? What happened? Are you okay? She says, and she is already moving toward me, already 3 steps into the reunion. The embrace. The story of the sister who missed her flight or had second thoughts or called at the last minute with some change of plans that Adila will immediately understand and forgive, because that is what Adila does. She handles things. She forgives. She makes everything make sense. I do not move. I say, sit down, Adila. The 2 agents step in behind me. She stops. The warmth on her face does not disappear all at once. It drains slowly, the way warmth leaves a room when a window is opened, until what is left is the expression underneath, which is not cold exactly. Not the villain's face I might have imagined if I had let myself imagine this. It is something more specific than cold. It is the expression of someone who has been very sure for a very long time and is now, for the first time, not sure. The excuses come in sequence. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain. Emma, tell them, she says, looking at me with something I might once have called desperation and now read correctly as strategy, the last available strategy, which is to make me the lever. Tell them, she says. I say nothing. Briggs reads her the charges: conspiracy, insurance fraud, identity theft, and then the last one, the reopened investigation into the death of Patricia Davis, and that is the moment. That is when I see it, the first real thing I have seen on Adela's face since I said her name in this room. Not guilt, not grief. The cold, specific recognition of someone who hid something deep and has just learned it has been found. They put the handcuffs on. She is quiet while they do it. She has stopped performing. There is nothing left to perform for. She looks at me once more before they take her out. She says, "You don't know what it's like, being the one who holds everything together." I look at her for a moment. My sister, 37 years old, standing in a broker's office in her good coat with her hands behind her back, telling me she held the family together. I say, "You didn't hold anything together. You consumed it." They take her out. I stand in the broker's office and I listen to their footsteps cross the lobby, and I listen to the glass door open and close. The broker is still at his desk. He is looking at the paperwork in front of him as if it might explain something. That evening, Briggs drives to my parents' house. She tells them what she has told me only in summary, the outline of it, the shape. I am not there. I did not want to be there. But she called me afterward from her car and told me what happened, because I think she understood that I needed to know. Roger sat down heavily in his chair, not the recliner, the dining room chair, the one closest to the door, as if he had been stopped mid-motion. He did not pretend. He said I knew something was off. He said he signed the papers because Adela said it was financial planning, and he didn't understand financial planning anymore, hadn't understood it since the store closed. And it was easier to sign than to ask, because asking meant understanding, and understanding meant being responsible for what he knew. He is not under arrest, but the case file will note his participation. His signature is on the documents. It will be there permanently, in the federal record, the forward-leaning R, and everything that follows it. Veronica was in the kitchen doorway when Briggs told them. She stood there with one hand on the frame, the way you stand when you need the room to hold you up a little. She said, "Is Emma safe?" Briggs said Emma is safe because a stranger stopped her at an airport, not because anyone in this house did. Veronica's hand went to the counter. She steadied herself. She did not say anything else. Briggs told me Veronica was still standing there when she left her hand on the counter. The kitchen behind her exactly as it always is. The cinnamon rolls long since gone, the good dishes back in the cabinet, everything in its place. The federal courthouse in Richmond has a particular quality of light in early spring. It comes through the high windows at an angle that falls short of warm, the kind of light that illuminates without comforting, and it lands on the courtroom in long, pale rectangles that shift slowly across the floor as the morning moves. I sit in the third row, behind the prosecution table, and I watch those rectangles move because it gives my eyes somewhere to go that is not Adela's back. I have been here every day, not because anyone asked me to. Briggs suggested early on that I might find it easier to follow the proceedings through the daily summaries her office compiles. I told her I would rather be present. She did not argue. She understands, I think, that there is a kind of work that can only be done in person, a kind of accounting that requires you to be in the room where the thing happened so that your body can confirm what your mind already knows. Claudia's testimony took 2 days. She sat in the witness box with her hands flat on the railing in front of her, the same way I sat at the metal table at the airport last December. The posture of someone who needs the surface to be solid because everything else is not. She described the recruitment in the flat, factual voice she had arrived at by then, the voice of someone who has told a true story enough times that the telling has become separate from the feeling. She described the moment Adela sat across from her at a coffee shop in Norfolk on a November afternoon 14 months ago and explained the arrangement. The financial compensation, the documents she would receive, the new life she would step into when Emma Davis no longer needed her own. She said, Adela described it the way you describe a transaction. Clear terms, clear timeline, clear deliverables. She said she asked what would happen to Emma, and Adela said Emma was making a personal choice to relocate and needed someone to maintain her financial presence during the transition, and that was all Claudia needed to know. She said she knew it wasn't right. She said she told herself it was a family matter and she didn't fully understand it and the money would change everything for her. And she had been underwater since the divorce, and Adela had always been the kind of person who made you feel that questioning her meant you had missed something obvious. The prosecutor asked her to play the recording. 11 seconds. Once Emma's gone, you become her. That's the deal. I watched the jury when the recording played. All 12 of them went still in the same moment. The particular stillness of people absorbing something they cannot unhear. Adela's defense attorney stands when it is his turn and he is good at his job, which I register the way I register all competence without judgment as a neutral fact. He builds his argument carefully. He tells the jury that Adela spent years holding a family together after her father's financial collapse, that she absorbed the burden of her parents' stability when no one else would, that she made decisions under sustained financial desperation that she would never have made otherwise. He says she was not a predator. He says she was a person who broke under pressure that no one else in her family was willing to carry. My hands go flat on my thighs. I know where that money came from. I watched the prosecution lay it out over 3 days of financial testimony, the full architecture of it, the insurance payout from Patricia's policy flowing into the Davis Family Trust, dispersed from there over 38 months in amounts calibrated to look like investment returns, used to fund the family dinners and the Christmas gifts in the hotel room when Roger's heat went out 2 winters ago, and the trip to see Veronica's sister in Savannah that Adela arranged as a birthday gift and paid for herself. She spent Patricia's money on the things that made her look generous. She took a dead woman's assets and used them to build the image of the sister who handles things, and she stood at Patricia's funeral and cried in a way I remember because it seemed so complete, so unperformed, and I held her arm in the parking lot afterward while she collected herself, and I thought, this is what grief looks like in someone who loved fully and now has to figure out how to continue. I think about that moment in the parking lot a lot, the specific weight of her arm under my hand. The defense attorney finishes. The prosecution's closing takes 40 minutes. When it is done, the jury files out and the courtroom settles into the particular suspended quiet of waiting. I wait. 3 hours and 12 minutes later, the jury comes back. When the foreperson says the word, I do not move. I have been very still for so long that stillness has become the thing I know how to do in this room. I watch Adela's back. She is still straight in her chair, still composed, still holding the posture that has always been part of how she presents herself, the posture of a person who is managing the situation, who has a plan, who knows what comes next. And then something changes. I see it happen from 15 feet away. It is not dramatic. It is not a collapse or a visible flinching. It is more like the moment in a footage analysis when the composite gives itself away. The frame where the false element shifts by a fraction and the whole construction becomes visible for what it is. Something goes out of her spine, some specific held thing that she has been maintaining since they put the handcuffs on in the broker's office. And what is left is just a person in a chair in a federal courtroom who has finally, for the first time, run out of moves. I look at that for a moment, then I look away, guilty on all counts. Sentencing 3 weeks later, decades in federal prison, no parole eligibility, the Davis Family Trust frozen, all assets seized, restitution to be dispersed to Patricia's estate, and to the other cases the investigation connected in the months following Adela's arrest. The Meridian Journeys Network, the travel agency and its subsidiaries, referred to a separate federal task force. 4 other cases reopened. 4 other families who will receive visits from agents in dark blazers, carrying folders full of documents that will rewrite what they thought they understood about a death they had already grieved. I think about those families sometimes, the specific vertigo of having a closed thing opened. I understand it from the inside now. Claudia takes a plea deal and cooperates fully. She testifies. She disappears into her sentence when it is done. I hope she comes out the other side as herself. Roger's letter arrives in March. 4 pages, handwritten, the forward-leaning R at the top of the first page. He tells me he knew the paperwork was irregular. He tells me he was afraid. He tells me he chose his own comfort over his daughter's safety, and he has been trying to find the sentence that adequately names what that is, and he cannot find it. He does not ask for forgiveness. At the bottom of the last page, in handwriting that is smaller than the rest, like he ran out of authority by the time he reached it, he asks if I am eating well. I read it. I folded along its original creases. I put it in the drawer of my desk, in the back, behind some case files, and I closed the drawer. Veronica sends a Christmas card in July. Not Christmas in July. She does not note the timing. There is no explanation of the delay. A card with a cardinal on the front, bright red against snow. The kind of generic winter cards sold in pharmacy checkout lines. Her name inside in her particular handwriting, neat and slightly right-tilted, the handwriting of a retired librarian who was taught penmanship by someone who believed it mattered. Just her name, nothing else. I hold it for a while. I think about the laminated luggage tag. I think about the specific efficiency of the knot she tied. In case your bag gets lost, honey. I put the card in the same drawer, on top of Roger's letter, and I close it again. My apartment has new locks. I had them installed the week I came home, along with a security system that is more than I need for a second-floor apartment in a quiet neighborhood in Richmond, but that I will never remove because need is no longer the metric I use for these decisions. My field kit sits on the desk. The isolated laptop is in its case. There is a case due Thursday. A surveillance footage analysis for a police department in Norfolk, and I have been working on it in the mornings before it gets fully light outside the way I work best, in the quiet before the parking lot below starts to fill. Patricia's watch is on the shelf above my desk. The evidence team released it to me 6 weeks after the sentencing. Next of kin, the inventory tag still attached to the crown. I remove the tag. I set the watch on the shelf where I can see it from my chair. The scratch on the crystal at the 2 position, the 1960s Omega that she wore to every family gathering for 15 years, and that I almost asked about on Christmas Eve when I saw it on Adela's wrist and then let the moment pass. I let a lot of moments pass. I am not doing that anymore. It is not a resolution, not the kind of thing you decide and then achieve cleanly. It is more like a recalibration. The kind you do to a piece of equipment that has been giving you readings you trusted without verifying. You reset the baseline. You check the output against the known reference. You do not assume the instrument is accurate just because it always has been. I open the case file on my laptop, the surveillance footage from Norfolk, a parking garage, a disputed timestamp, a vehicle that may or may not have been present at a location on a specific evening. I load the first clip and I watch it frame by frame, the way I always do, looking for the thing in the frame that the frame was not meant to show. This is the work. It has always been the work. Finding what is real inside what has been manufactured. Proving the difference when someone has tried very hard to make that difference invisible. I spent my career doing this for strangers. I was good at it. I just never turned the lens on the people closest to me. Now I do, every time.